From the ethereal realm of devotion to the practicality of daily spiritual practice, across the vast landscape of Vedic wisdom and teachings, this is Vaishnava Voices. Hosted by the dynamic husband and wife duo, Sitapati Das and Dana Devi, they bring to you an intimate exploration of the vibrant world of Vaishnavism. Interweaving ancient scriptures with modern contexts, personal stories with universal lessons, they illuminate the path of love, devotion, and conscious living.
Hare Krishna, and welcome everyone to another episode of Vaishnava Voices. I'm your co-host, Sitapati Das, and beside me, as always, is the wonderful Dana Devi. Today, as with every episode, we're diving deep into the heart of Vaishnava teachings, exploring the wisdom, culture, and practices that guide us towards a life filled with devotion and service.
That's right, Sitapati. We are thrilled to have you on this journey with us. Whether you are a seasoned devotee, a spiritual seeker, or simply curious about Vaishnavism, here in Vaishnava Voices, we are all about fostering connection, understanding, and growth. And remember, we are not just exploring, we are also experiencing. So let's begin.
So sit back, prepare your hearts and minds, and tune into the sounds of the soul on Vaishnava Voices.
Hare Krishna, and welcome to today's episode of Vaishnava Voices. We're talking about Aindra, the great Kirtaniya, the author, sadhaka, great personality. And we have two very special guests. We don't need to introduce ourselves because we already did that in the intro. Today we have two special guests. One is responsible for a lot of the interviews that were done, hundreds of hours of interviews that were done for Aindra Kirtan Revolution, the book by Kalachandji Das, who is Tamal Krishna Goswami's brother. Yeah, far out, huh? That book, Aindra Kirtan Revolution, and that is none other than Akinchana Krishna Das. Welcome, Akinchana Krishna Das. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Sripati. Nice to see you. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavats. And you've not met my wife, Dana Devi, before? This is Dana Devi, Akinchana Krishna Das.
Very nice to meet
I
you.
hear about you a lot. Nice to meet you.
And we also have with us today from the UK, Bhakti Sastri Chris Briscoe, who is working on a review of the book that you wrote did so many of the interviews for. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for coming on with us today. And let me just unmute your mic for you. Sorry, we missed what you said there.
Well, Hare Krishna, thanks for having me on.
Hare Krishna, Grace.
Hare Krishna. So there's a whole lot that we could talk about, but let's just get straight to the meat of the matter. Akinchana Krishna, who killed Aindra Das? But wait, no spoilers. We're going to get to that at the end. You're going to have to watch it all the way to the end to find that out. Let's start at the beginning with the lotus that sprouts from the navel of Mahavishnu, where Lord Brahma finds himself in an empty universe and hears only the sound of the two syllables, tapa, telling him to perform austerities. And then fast forward a little bit from there, and at some point, Akinchana Krishna takes birth on the earth in the Kali Yuga of the 28th Manvantar during the Sankirtan Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then ends up somehow in the ashram of the 24-hour Kirtan Mandali with Aindra Prabhu, right? That's kind of where the confluence of the rivers meets. When was it that you ended up in Vrindavan with Aindra Prabhu? I think that's where I'd like to start from.
Sure. The first time I met Aindra was on my first visit to the ISKCON Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan. And that was just before Kartik of 1998. That's the first time that I visited there. And I'd been part of the Krishna consciousness movement maybe for about 2 years. A lot of that time was as a congregation member. And then I spent several months in a temple in Towako, New Jersey, in the summer of '98, 4 or 5 months. I had some friends that convinced me to come and do Braj Mandal Parikram in Kartik of that year, 1998. And when we got to the temple, I came into the temple room, and till then, most of my experience of kirtan was pretty simple. In our temple in New Jersey, I remember there was one lady devotee that could play mridanga, and if she didn't show up to Mangalarti, that means there was no mridanga playing. And just in general, there was a certain level of experience of what I had understood kirtan to be up until that time. And when I came into the temple room, I think I understood who Aindra was already, because I had heard some recordings like his Vrindavan mellows and stuff like that. But the image of Aindra at that time was something like absolutely extraordinary. He was following Chaturmasya, and so he had his beard grown out, his hair grown out. That's one of the vows that one can make in Chaturmasya. And I remember he was kind of sitting behind his harmonium, and one of his legs was up, his knee was up, and he had ankle bells on. And the main thing that I remember is, if you've ever seen the eyes of like a lion, it's something like absolutely ferocious and kind of terrifying, like just something completely wild. That's the image that I have of Aindra, is that with these eyes that were just something like I'd never seen before, he was looking at the deity, and his singing was just like the most intense, desperate crying for God that I'd ever seen before. And so just the spirit, the mood that he was singing with was, it left an incredibly powerful impression on me just from the first moments of seeing him in that temple. I understood that I was in the presence of something like completely extraordinary. And his singing was very beautiful, very artistic. I could also understand that the artistry with which he was singing and doing his kirtan was also on a completely different level than I'd ever seen anybody do kirtan before. And but the main thing that I was just struck by was just the like obvious, incredible devotion that was coming from him while he was singing. That's my first memory. I'm sure I've told that many times, but it really was something very profound. In Kartik, we honor Bahulastami, I think 8 days into Kartik. It must be 8 days into Kartik. And so at that time, the Braj Mandal Parikram was at Radha Kund. We stayed in the Govardhan and Radha Kund area for a few nights as part of the Braj Mandal Parikram. And it kind of culminated in Bahulastami, which if you've ever experienced, it tends to be like a very hectic, wild thing with, countless people. Anyway, I took my bath in Radha Kund for the first time in my life. I guess I was 20 years old. And afterwards, there's the Gopal temple on the bank of Radha Kund, if you might be familiar with. That's where now Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj's samadhi is located. And Aindra was there in the temple room. This was after the midnight bathing. And I remember, it was like there was maybe one candle or something like that on the altar. That was the only light. And I went into that Gopal temple because I think I had left, my gamsha there, or my change of clothes or something like that. And so I was just going there to pick those up. And, and the kirtan there was, Aindra was kind of crouched down and he was playing the wampers, and Madhava was there playing mridanga. And there's maybe like 15 or 20 people there. And again, it was just something like so absolutely next level. When the kirtan kind of came to a crescendo, I remember feeling like I could not help but just kind of like jump up and dance. It was just something really, really ecstatic. And I think, at that time, it really solidified something for me in my mind, like that, this Krishna consciousness movement is something like truly amazing. And this person, Aindra Prabhu, is like just the most exceptional person I've encountered. And the kirtan was just so attractive. I was into whatever kind of music before Krishna consciousness, but having that experience in kirtan really made me think like, this is where I want to focus my energy. I kind of like grew a determination that, I need to learn, this kind of singing, this kind of mridanga playing, like that. Later, a friend told me that Aindra's comment at the end of that Bahulastami kirtan, Aindra's comment was, that was the best kirtan I was ever in my entire life, which is a pretty incredible statement. He didn't say that was the best kirtan I've ever led. He just said, that's the best kirtan I was ever in. Just to give a feeling for, it was a really exceptional experience. So that was my into Aindra. I then, shortly thereafter, I did meet him personally, spend time in his room, got to know him. He was just, I'm going to use the same like superlative words every time. It was just like, just an incredible, exceptional person, incredibly exciting to be around. It was, I was just completely like drawn to him and interested in being around him. Sorry, you going to ask me something?
Oh, it's interesting that you pull out the Bahulastami pastime. It's in the book, of course, that pastime. And is it your memories that are in there of that? Your perspective? Like we have like a first person camera perspective of someone who's there, right? Was it you or Gopal?
Yeah, it probably would have been. I mean, some of the thing would have been me. Gopal was also in that kirtan.
It's funny because the 1998 was the year when I had this recording of Aindra doing this kirtan in 1998 that I got in 1998. Someone, maybe Bhakti Siddhanta Swami, brought it back from Vrindavan. And I just remember listening to it over and over again and, learning all of the things, as you say, like as a musician before I came to Krishna consciousness, when I heard that, I was like, this is incredible. And then to hear that pastime that took place there, there's like, it's a cult within a cult. To be frank about it, you can go, like you said, there's like in ISKCON, there's like before Aindra and after Aindra, it's like you go into the temple and it's 70s mridanga playing all day, all night. Love it. But now you can go anywhere in the world and sit down and bust out, a Vrindavan Mellows Raj Vilas Raga, and then everybody locks in with the cartels and the mridanga, and it's like its own sampradaya or style of kirtan, like you hear about Narottam and Srinivas creating their own Shamananda, their own kind of sampradayas of kirtan, and that's really what Aindra's done. His influence is like all pervasive.
It's great that it's funny that you say that. A friend of mine told me, I'm not sure how. I mean, I hope this is true. I'm just repeating what someone told me, that in Calcutta, you can go and study and get master's degrees and university degrees in kirtan, like in Gaudiya kirtan. It is a very like high level art. You know, all the different types of tals and speeds on the mridanga, you know, mixed with just like this huge tradition. It's not considered just like a simple folk type of music. I mean, it's a very highly developed art form, and people go study that. And I think after probably some controversy and, you know, difficult discussion or whatever, one of these Calcutta Kirtan universities decided to put Aindra's style of kirtan on the curriculum, that's part of what one has to master in order to be accredited by the university as, like, you know, you've learned the art of kirtan. It's pretty amazing, right?
It is. We don't know if it's true, and we don't care. It's amazing. Yeah. Your Bhima Karma, you know Bhima Karma, Prabhu?
I know him well. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, he's like well steeped in that whole thing, you know, like there's one video of him on his 40th birthday going, it's my 40th birthday, so I composed this 40 beat tal on the mridanga, and he starts playing it. And I'm listening to it, I'm like, dude, how's anyone ever going to be able to follow that? Like, or do a kirtan to that? And then he starts like singing to it, and I'm like, dude, this is just like way beyond levels of what people can do. People did have that experience with Aindra's kirtan. You know, there's the Prabhupada 3, you know, ching, 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 4 on the floor, AC/DC of kirtan, you know, the classic Prabhupada melody. And then there's Aindra's got this really complex kind of style. And he does talk about it in the book. So I want to kind of divide today's episode into a couple of parts. You know, first talking about the Kirtan Revolution book, and then talking about Aindra's own book that he wrote, The Transcendental Heart of Book Distribution. Reality burns brighter than... Yeah, Reality Burns Brighter Than Imagination, I believe, is the subtitle. Yeah, that's an esoteric offering there. But, you know, let's lead into it with the biography, the Leela, and then get to the Tattva. Chris, do you have any reflections at this point, or any thoughts from hearing what Akinchana's been sharing so far?
Yeah, well, I've read the book twice. I'm wanting to do a good book review for it on Amazon, so I've been looking through it. The main thing is there's so many nuggets of gold. Well, nuggets of gold in that book. His example, it seems to me he answers so many questions that just normal ISKCON devotees would like to know. So he's such a and the character of the man, I think, needs to be studied so much. It could clear up a whole load of things. What drew me to the book was that he stayed in ISKCON when the society how it's been led has caused so many people to move away for many good reasons. But and his first night at the temple, he had this vision, this vivid dream of these holy men seeing to him, coming to him and saying, "This is your one chance to go back to Godhead, to stay in ISKCON." And he took a vow in that, and it's very. I just think it's a very unique person, but it's a very unique book, a very unique life. He stayed he stayed in ISKCON, and his example and what he did was there for all to see and benefit tremendously from. I'm coming from a perspective where I believe the institution of ISKCON has been infiltrated by very bad elements, and so for somebody to stay in a society like that, where you get affected, where you're standing out and people are trying to get you, and he's such an amazing devotee, and I'll just know that just from reading the book, let alone having the profound experiences of meeting him, which I never did. So that's my basic reflections so far. And I was reading that bit about that the last day of Kartik, when there's that kirtan, which went out of the temple and went so many places. And I was just wondering if because Srila Prabhupada, I think, did kirtans when he said things like, "Oh, could you see, Lord Brahma was at the kirtan," and just wondered if Aindra said anything like that. Oh, you could see this demigod or that demigod at a kirtan, because when kirtans are amazing, you get beings you can't see, probably enhancing it a lot, putting a lot more power into that. So I was just wondering that. So if Akinchana Prabhu knows that, Aindra said anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things to respond to. I was just listening to Aindra talk at one of the Vyasa Puja ceremonies of Srila Prabhupada, and he's emphatic, saying this ISKCON movement is complete. We should never neglect this point. Everything is in this ISKCON movement to become fully Krishna conscious, if you want it. And I think that his mentality was that he was clearly aware that there may be so many anomalies in the institution, or worse. And he writes about that very clearly. People take that in a bad way, that he's criticizing the institution. I don't think that's the way he meant it. I think he's equipping devotees with a type of discrimination to kind of distinguish between maybe toxic externals and essentials. And I think he was absolutely fixed that, between Srila Prabhupada's books and the holy name of Krishna and the deities and Vrindavan Dham and so many other, pure devotional elements, that was all the facility that one needs to attain self-realization, perfection in life. There was one time when I was, ISKCON Vrindavan changed management many times over the years. I think there's been something like, I'm pretty sure there's been more than 20 presidents in the history of ISKCON Vrindavan, and that's, since 76. Maybe 24, 25 different temple presidents. So Aindra was there for 24 years, and he lived under different types of management. And I think he had different experiences with different managers, some more positive, some maybe less so. And there was one point, maybe in the mid-2000s, where he just sat with me and he had this mood of like total exhaustion. And he said something like, sometimes I think maybe we could just move the kirtan party and find our own place and just kind of set up an ashram somewhere else. And then he said, but I've taken a vow to my spiritual master that I will stay in this ISKCON movement for at least 50 years. That's what he said. He said, so that when I have to meet Srila Prabhupada again, I can say to him, well, Srila Prabhupada, at least I managed to stay in your movement for 50 years. Now, as far as experiences of like higher spiritual dimensions while doing kirtan, there isn't a story that's on my mind right now that I can think of. Mainly we heard, Aindra Prabhu was doing his bhajan kind of in his room, where especially in the early part of the day, he would kind of keep himself in solitude and, chanting, and he had his deity worship. And so he really spent a lot of time kind of alone in his room with his deities. And to my understanding, at least a lot of the things that are on my mind it seems like a lot of his kind of very mystical experiences were happening in his room, actually. Between dreams that he might have had or different experiences with his deities. Anyway, it's a nice question. I'm going to think about it more if we've heard anything like that about him talking about, seeing Narada Muni in a dream. There was a story. I was just speaking with someone very close to Aindra Prabhu yesterday. He reminded me. I think it was at the like you described the kirtan at the end of Kartik. Aindra Prabhu kind of going around the temple and then doing kirtan for some time. I wasn't there, unfortunately. And he gave a speech where he said something like, I'm going back to Godhead, and anybody who helps me with like my Sankirtan performances, they're coming with me. And afterwards, I hope I don't get this story too wrong. Afterwards, the devotees inquired, like, wow, Aindra, where is that coming from? And he said that one of the pujaris of Radha Shamasundar maybe had a dream where the deities said to them, who is this person singing the kirtan so nicely? And then in the dream, it was Narada Muni that said, oh, that's my disciple, Aindra. So, I guess if you're connected to Guru Parampara, then any of the members of that Parampara may claim you as a disciple. So somehow in that dream, Narada Muni was saying, oh, that is my disciple, Aindra Prabhu. And Radha Shamasundar or Radharani, they said, their reply was, oh, he should come and sing personally for us, and he should bring his group, all those that are doing the kirtan with him, they should all come. In other words, that the deities were pleased by Aindra's kirtan performances and were calling him back to Godhead, along with those who were helping him. Anyway, there's a little bit of an esoteric story, but very beautiful.
It is incredible. And, most of the sages or sadhus or pure-hearted souls, they have these dreams, the subconscious life. They connect with the higher spirit or any living entities, but in this case, we're higher, Krishna himself speaking to him, and he's speaking to this sadhu through the dreams is incredible. I don't think I will be like, oh, that's not true. In many, many, many ways, even in the scriptures, sadhus used to have dreams and what do you call this one? Apariciones? Visions. Yeah, visions. Yes, incredible. Because he was so pure, the way he was directing himself and the way how he was so true to his vow made him so powerful and pure to the point that such a higher living entities can get in touch with him.
Yeah, I think even if you look at like Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita, I don't remember all the instances, but Srila Bhakti Siddhanta came in his dreams telling him to take sannyas. He had visions of Krishna on the Jaladuta on his way to America. So I agree with you. Devotees that are in very elevated levels of Krishna consciousness, then their dream, their reality just becomes full of different types of contact with Guru, with Krishna. And Aindra was absolutely like that. He actually told me at one point, he said there was a time in my spiritual life where I was looking so forward to going to sleep at night because I was getting so much more enlightenment during my dreams than compared to when I was awake. What I understood is that Srila Prabhupada was coming in Aindra Prabhu's dreams and revealing different confidential things to him. Hey, Sita
And
Buddy.
we're back.
Hmm.
We just dropped off for a second. Internet connection problems. All of his party will go back with him. You know, the thing is, Aindra just sat there in Vrindavan and did kirtan. He's just like, I'm just going to sit in Vrindavan and do kirtan. And some people might criticize, oh, that's like bhajan and Andi Bhav, you know? He's like doing the kind of like retire to Vrindavan to chant thing rather than going out and preaching, traveling around the world, and you know. But you know, we first met Akinchana Krishna when you came to Australia in 2009 with Gauravani and As Kindred Spirits and some of the Mayapuris.
Mm.
And you know, then after that, we had a whole slew of Kirtanias come through. Amala Krishna Prabhu, Vyasaki Prabhu, Madhava came, you know, through Australia a number of times. And I was just present to the power, the overflowing of kirtan that had taken place from him sitting in that place, as you were saying, taking his vow and just staying fixed in that. As Chris pointed to, staying in ISKCON no matter what, as you pointed out, Akinchana Krishna Prabhu, under so many changes of management and this era, that era, you know, so many things going on around him. He just stayed there, stayed chanting 24-hour kirtan. And the effect is so powerful to the point that, you know, we had Madhava sitting in our house, you know, giving a talk, mridanga lesson, you know, after having been sitting there in that kirtan and now him going out, but Aindra staying there. And we were in the 24-hour kirtan in Canberra with Amala Kirtan. And I was, you know, we were live streaming on the internet. That's when the news came in that Aindra Prabhu had left his body. And so many people were focused on the chanting of the holy name there. And we're there and we're like singing Aindra's melodies, playing the beats from Aindra's mridanga players, you know. Everybody, people just come there, had never met each other before, can sit down and just do kirtan together because we're all on the same frequency. We're all tuned into like Aindra's kirtan. So it's like, as you say that, his whole party's going back to him. I'm like, not just the people who are sitting with him in Vrindavan, like all over the world.
Mm. Yeah, that's very nice. I mean, I think that Aindra's, you know, phenomenal example and his many, like, you know, very powerful realizations. I mean, at this point, they're available very widely. And if someone wants to take shelter of that, I think that, you know, that's an incredibly favorable influence to take shelter of for making advancement in Krishna consciousness. I have no doubt about that.
Well, let's switch gears and have a look at that then. So, I mean, people can download, you know, they can buy Aindra Kirtan Revolution, you know, on Amazon. You can get the hard copy book. You can also get Aindra's own book, The Transcendental Heart of Book Distribution.
The
And
Heart
then
Transcendental
The
Book
Heart of Transcendental Book Distribution. Sorry. Thank you. The Heart of Transcendental Book Distribution.
Mm.
Let me create that as a banner and we'll put it along the bottom of the screen. So, okay, it's The Heart Transcendental Book Distribution. So, you know, I heard someone say to me that they said, oh, my guru told me that, you know, I can listen to Aindra's kirtans, but I shouldn't listen to any of his lectures or read his book.
Or read his book. Well, I mean, as far as reading his book is concerned, he says very clearly in, you know, one of the introductory portions of the book that his book is in the category of the most confidential type of devotional literature. You know, some literature in Krishna consciousness is meant to be widely distributed. You know, Bhagavad Gita as it is, for example, we want everybody to have that. We want everybody to read that and absorb themselves in that. And, you know, and maybe so many other books, for example, like so many small books of Srila Prabhupada. I got The Science of Self-Realization and A Second Chance, the story of Ajamil, and the Journey Home, and whatever. Like, there's so many BBT titles which are meant for mass distribution, meant for mass public consumption. Anywhere, no matter where you're at, you're eating meat, you're not following any regulative principles, we want you to read that. But there's like a curriculum in Krishna consciousness of literature that's maybe appropriate for different stages of spiritual advancement. Srila Prabhupada is always emphasizing that the Srimad Bhagavatam should be systematically gone through from, the first canto to the end. It's not a type of book where you can just kind of open it up wherever you choose and just read whatever you want. People tend to maybe jump straight to the 10th canto, straight to the stories about Krishna and the gopis, and they don't have the right understanding to be able to like deal with those stories correctly, utilize them for their spiritual life in an appropriate way. So, Srila Prabhupada, like, I think he says Bhagavad Gita is like the undergraduate degree, Srimad Bhagavatam is like the master's degree, Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the PhD. And so like that, there's like a gradation of Gaudiya literature. There's some literature in Gaudiya Vaishnavism that's extremely confidential, that it may just be a very small number of devotees that it's even appropriate for them to try to read, because otherwise there can be so much misunderstanding, right? There's such a huge history like of sahajiaism in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, from people kind of taking very high things in a cheap way. Aindra clearly says that his book is in the category of like kind of the most confidential Krishna conscious literature. He was stressing, like, even there was many young devotees who were staying with him and doing kirtan with him. And he was stressing to them that it's important that you read all of Srila Prabhupada's books before you read my book. And I know many of those devotees, even still to this day, they haven't gotten there to Aindra's book yet. So as far as someone advising some caution to read Aindra's book, I can appreciate that. Although I think if you love Aindra, you do want to come to that point of coming to the point of reading to his book eventually, at the right time. As far as, someone like prohibiting listening to his lectures, I can't really relate to that at all. I don't understand, where that's coming from. Is that coming from some kind of misunderstanding about what's in those lectures? Or is it just coming from like a dislike or a distrust of Aindra? Or what is that? I'm not sure. I think the lectures are fantastic. And generally what I've seen is that, devotees that kind of get absorbed in Aindra's lectures, it tends to generate like a ton of devotional enthusiasm. And, even people that didn't meet Aindra, they kind of get fired up and they want to do, Harinam Sankirtan, and they just feel kind of different fresh realizations and understandings. Generally, especially public lectures, he's not speaking inappropriately, like, in a way that a devotee shouldn't speak in public. I think he's quite aware, and I think he speaks like in a very wonderful way that, if someone wants to get into that, it's like all nourishing subject matter in Krishna consciousness. That's my feeling.
Okay, great. Well, I've got here's one. Let's take a look at this. This is actually hosted in my YouTube account. Aindra, Cult of Harinam, Part 1 of 2.
I was hearing Mother Parvati. I think she was saying something about
It's those lion eyes, huh?
different types of personalities. You know, Srila Prabhupada, my observation is that different disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they represent different aspects of Srila Prabhupada's personality. It's not all one. So I guess I'm one of them. So if you'll bear with me, it takes all kinds to make a world of Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. This might take a few extra minutes. I hope that my holy God brothers don't get too angry at me. If you'll bear with me. There's two things required for successful spiritual life. One is a highly empowered, potent spiritual master, and the other is a receptive disciple. It takes a receptive disciple to actually grasp, understand, and accept the essence, the essential gift that the spiritual master is endeavoring with all of his potency to give us. If we're not receptive, or to the extent that we are receptive, let's put it that way, we will be able to understand and receive that gift. And to the extent that we receive that gift, to the extent we realize what we're receiving, to that extent we'll be able to give it. So ultimately, Srila Prabhupada has given us the holy name of Krishna. That is the main gift that Srila Prabhupada has given us. Sankirtan Dharma is the Mukhya Dharma of this age of Kali. So this Nam Sankirtan, that is the key which opens the treasure chest of Krishna's Guna, Rupa, and Leelas. And those who are chanting purely will understand clearly what I'm talking about. So here's a little something that I've written. This is actually an excerpt from a book that I was hoping.
What's that, Prabhu? You're on mute. Hang on. You'll need to unmute.
Excuse me. He said, those who are chanting purely
Purely.
will understand what I'm saying. What a great comment. Very strong. Sorry, you can continue.
Okay.
I was hoping to offer to Srila Prabhupada for his disappearance day, but unfortunately it got held up at the press, so it ain't happening. So I'm entitling this excerpt for today's reading as Serving Srila Prabhupada's Mission in His Wake. To hell with trying to secure a comfortable situation within this temporary world of shadowy afflictions. To hell with hoping for heavenly delights on earth, elevation to Swargalok, or residence on any of the highest planets within this cosmos. To hell with the achievement of mystic perfections. To hell with all our exuberant eating, sleeping, mating, and defending on the plea of keeping body and soul together for the performance of sacrifice. To hell with the attempt to curtail our generally excessive eating, sleeping, mating, and defending with the aim of practicing the principles of practical renunciation. To hell with undergoing severe penances and austerities for the sake of self-realization and God consciousness. To hell with the achievement of the 5 kinds of liberation. To hell with the attainment of Vaikuntha Loka and the eternal kingdom of God. To hell with having been born on earth as some kind of dull-headed humanoid in this most glorious age of Kali, in which Lord Chaitanya has appeared to make self-realization easy by inaugurating the Sankirtan movement of the holy name. To hell with conceitedly boasting of our descent from a most venerable disciplic succession of eternally perfect Gaudiya Vaishnavacharyas. To hell with exploiting the prestige of sitting at the feet of such a topmost Rasik Vaishnava as His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, or any other for that matter. To hell with strictly following the principles of Varnashram Dharma. That is for the Kanishta Adhikaris having meager pure devotional Shraddha. To hell with playing mommy and daddy in the material world. To hell with our having opened hundreds of temples, restaurants, and farm communities with the aim of delivering all the fallen conditioned souls in the universe from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Now, it may sound strange to you. Bear with me, please. To hell with animal husbandry. To hell with following from A to Z all the damn rules and regulations of the International Society for Rules and Regulations. To hell with trying to become a Hare Krishna clone. To hell with our having advanced, in quotes, through the fires of years upon years of ordeal in the almost intolerable association of blundering neophytes. To hell with attempting to express our love for Guru and Krishna in terms of endlessly bearing the brunt of relentless institutional strife. To hell with towing the party line. To hell with the institutionalism of the institutionalist. To hell with religio-institutional corporatocracy. To hell with trying to reconcile ourselves to the neoteric drift of a movement's hand-picked leadership. To hell with being a Hare Krishna yes man. To hell with all the superficial role modeling. To hell with our profiling as advanced devotees when we know damn well we're not. To hell with palming off self-affected, spiritually gutless, macho Kali Yuga so-called heroism as inspirational, devotional dignity. Real heroism aims exclusively to conquer the heart of Krishna. To hell with grappling for socio-religious eminence. To hell with the institutional rubber stamping of Sampradaya supermen. To hell with the necessary evil of poorly organized religion. To hell with all the meetings, resolutions, revolutions, dissolutions, and no solutions ad infinitum. To hell with the ever-abounding, all-entangling crisis mismanagement syndrome. What could be expected of an institution that currently runs rather like a decapitated donkey? You'll understand what I'm talking about if you've had any experience. To hell with our having supposedly heard and regurgitated hundreds and thousands of Bhagavatam classes, dutifully attended thousands and millions of Mangalartik and Guru Puja Kirtans, and perfunctorily chanted millions and billions of rounds of Mahamantra Japa, Shnik, Shnik, Ram, Ram. To hell with all our vehemently preaching about how we're supposed to preach about how we're supposed to preach about how we're supposed to preach. What are we preachers supposed to be preaching about? To what extent have we actually understood? To hell with the profiteering of the cash covetous business brain mongers of transcendental knowledge. To hell with the Hindu-Bindu Society for Krishna consciousness. I say to hell with milking the Hindu cash cow. To hell with the cost-effective, vote-wise Hare Krishna phobia. To hell with the painfully put on Sankirtan smile. To hell with it. Like infatuated children, avidly engrossed in the perpetual pastime of competitively collecting rare and unusual coinage, we accumulate the hundreds and thousands of unqualified neophyte disciples under the pretext of perpetuating the Sampradaya. I say to hell with it. To hell with, on the plea of concern for others, becoming so blunderingly bogged down with all the petty little problems of the hundred.
So there you go. That's your experience of Aindra if you were there and you left at that point, which many people did, right? No, maybe not many people, but some people did. They left. They were like, I can't handle this, and walked out. And then
There's
that
a part
became.
two. Are you going to play the part two?
No, I think we should leave it there. Okay, let's play part two. Let me find part two. Part two is here, it says. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, you want to play part two? We should hear more of it, or of this condemnation of it's halftime. It's the halftime break. Let's have the halftime commentary from
Sure, should I start?
Yeah, let's have halftime commentary from Akinchana Krishna and Chris Briscoe and Dana Devi.
Guru means heavy, the sadhus are meant to speak in a way to kind of cut at your false ego. What a boring world, or what a boring, spiritual life it would be if our sadhus are just, speaking in boring platitudes like "you're okay, I'm okay, everything is good, you're good." The first point is Aindra's a sadhu, and I think we should be like very cautious, very slow to kind of criticize just out of respect for that point. Who can show his kind of track record of purity, of devotional service? Such people, we can appreciate some. We may be able to appreciate criticism if someone can first, be even in the ballpark of his standard of Krishna consciousness. I don't know if it's the right time to bring this up, but I mean, the point that he's coming to is a point that any new devotee could appreciate and understand. He's actually
No
not
spoilers, though. No spoilers.
Okay, no spoilers. Well, anyway, if there's no spoilers, then I'm a little bit stuck in what to say next. Just give me a moment.
Sure. Let's go. Should we go to Chris in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, basically, because I love Aindra, because I respect Aindra, I want to hear him out. What is he talking about? I don't think he's just going to say some nonsense. I've never heard him talk Prajalpa in my life, actually. And so I don't think he's talking Prajalpa now. What is he getting at? What's the point? I actually want to know if, I think it would be just unfortunate not to hear him out and not try to understand what he's saying. And, it's kind of, even in modern discourse, like on the internet, getting into hyperbole and kind of like making strong statements as a way of attracting people's attention and getting people to listen to you. That's kind of like a standard thing, and I expect that's what he's doing.
Okay.
He was, I guess, because he was in Vrindavan and he's seen the wave of changes, the consciousness of people coming and going. He appears to be a very observant person, in my view. And through to that, he has seen all the impurities and all the fakeness of people dressed up as a gurus and pretenders. So how I see and what I hear from him is straight truth. And people may have this personality of saying, like he cannot speak this way, it's criticizing. It's like, I don't see him as criticizing. I see him giving straight facts. What's happening right there and the future of the society as the observation was right there, and the consequences, the devolution of things. And I don't think he was criticizing, because if so, like for example, if someone, let's say, if your mom says, you know what, you just are this much lazy and you don't see that your life, your future in this way, your mother is saying, because she knows about it. She's observing you. And if she's saying that to you, it's because she is your mother, and as a well-wisher, she's going to say things as the things as they are, for you to actually realize, oh, wait, someone that cares about me is telling me something that I'm pretending that I'm not. And guess what? That's exactly what he was doing as a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, as a honest brahmachari or guru. He has to say it, because like you mentioned before, that what we have in these days is just like these sweet whisperers. As long they they protect your ego and they pat your ego, you feel like, oh my gosh, this is my guru, because they sweetly spoken to you. But behind that, they don't know the reality of the situation. What actually is a guru? How actually a guru directs a person and just breaks the bubbles of these lies that are living, or this pretentious life they're living.
Great, thank you. And Chris.
Well, basically, the "to hell with" speech was spoken twice by Aindra, at both times with the preamble. We saw in your thing the preamble before we went into that, what we just listened to. But the other preamble is from the book itself, and the preamble of that, if I may, is, "Hey Radhe Shyam, please do not forsake me. Please forgive me for my many obvious faults and shortcomings, and somehow or other compassionately find the ways and means to take my withering soul to your lotus feet. Otherwise, what hope is there for such a helplessly fallen and blameworthy creature as myself?" So he puts himself into that position, then he goes into that "to hell with." So there's two different preambles, and it just struck me that as Srimad Bhagavatam is not just spoken once by Vasudeva, it's spoken by Sukadeva, and so you have that concept coming into it. So looking at things from different angles, and also he probably wasn't planning to give that speech, but it has to be remembered that he was goaded. He was goaded. I'm not saying that because he was goaded, he therefore got into that. He wasn't affected by that. But, well, I mean, I don't know. I can't say. But he was promised. He was going to speak last, because they often try to shunt him to the end of the line when he was going to speak. I mean, we're talking about a great soul here. I mean, what's happening? Why is that? And then not only that, but he was told beforehand his speech should have to be cut into half, and made when you complained or started to question that, he said you may be lucky to get anything at all. It was so arrogant. This is the context for when he then sat down to make those speech. And I haven't seen this before, what you just showed. Right at the beginning of that, you can see his eyes, absolute fire, crazy, full of fire, full of life. I mean, my wife, sometimes she's rid me when she's seen the book, and she calls him as a nickname, crazy eyes. But I mean, you can see somebody thinking it like that, but it's it's different contexts. And in the thing itself, what he's talking about, as I think Dan and Dave was saying, people can relate to that very easily. And one of the big things he talks about is honest endeavor, rather than being attracted to being too much hemmed in about a position and all that. So honest endeavor, anyway, yes, there's this other. Well, there's so many points that would just, as he says in the speech. In the speech, people, he's God brothers, not just God brothers, but other people. But he would just know what he means by, what he's saying, because, and in the book, the whole context of is these are problems in the material world, and the material world is going to infiltrate into an institution. I mean, generally, institution and devotion to Godhead go ill together, but it's a good thing to be able to preach it. It's a necessary evil. I think I heard Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati said it's a necessary evil. I heard that. I might be wrong, but anyway. So there's a lot there, and yes, that's what I'll say at halftime. That's my halftime commentary.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. For me, this has been in my account here for 12 years now. I uploaded it shortly after he disappeared, disappearance pastime. And listening to it again now, I hear I hear a combination of a prayer by Madhavendra Puri and a statement by Yamunacharya that Srila Prabhupada quotes both of them early on in the Bhagavad Gita in like the second chapter. But because there's no spoilers at halftime, I'll come back at the full time to fully develop that thesis. You got something else you want to say?
Yeah. The other thing while Chris was speaking about this, it came to my realization about how ferocious he is, and there is a reason behind that ferociousness for him. One of the things is having to be dealing with all of this pestilence, we can call it, of negative energy, fake gurus, and disciples that just like, pretending to be high up. I find him, when he speaks that way, I find him like, he's just like, this is a pestilence for me. This is something uncomfortable for me. This is not something that we are meant to be dealing with or coming in association with. This is something we have to be getting rid of it rather than just bringing it into our life. And having him to be a very strict brahmachari, very God-conscious and pure-heartedness there, they cannot deal with this thing. Myself, I see myself in that position where situations where I see people behaving in such a way, it is just so, it's kind of like an energy, negative energy coming into your life and sucking in forcefully. It is just, no, I don't deal with this. This is not me, and I'm not going to invite this type of horrible energy. I'm trying to get myself out of this, and we see people coming with this potently. So I see him as that, get out of this. It was saying everyone, get out of this,
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to cue it up. Any final halftime comments, Akinchana Krishna Prabhu, while I'm bringing this up?
I think I'll have a lot more to say after the second part.
Okay. Here we go. Let's roll Cult of Harinam 2 of 2.
Find time and space required to complete even the minimum non-budget expected of a new bhakta, then what of achieving the advanced internal devotional realizations needed to become, for the benefit of one's disciples, anything better than a half-baked cookie? To hell with the undignified, artfully employed, hard-nosed, cunningly politic, cold-shouldering, dog-eat-dog, bureaucratic, ecclesiastical, oligarchic spin control. Has anyone ever achieved prema by this approach? It's almost over. To hell with religio-institutional mass consensual trance. To hell with being a pawn on the religio-managerialist chessboard of any stool-passing mortal. To hell with coyly compromising the truth to kowtow to the cacophonous misconclusions of dull-headed, under-enlightened ecclesiastics of religio-executive clout. To hell with all the rubbish, time-wasting, power-politicking, religio-institutional, inter-institutional hostilities. Are there not yet innumerable grumblers intent on being inexorably encumbered by such endless trivial affairs? To hell with in-house party-spirited, pseudo-disciplined partiality. To hell with the materially concocted hallucination of having so-called friends and enemies among the Vaishnavas. To hell with the perfidiously inflicted, heartlessly top-heavy, centralized manipulation of manpower and money on the threadbare plea of spreading love of Godhead to such scheming preoccupations now indispensably supersede our life's mission of becoming mad after Krishna. To hell with scrambling to savor varieties of mundane rasa on the pretext of fostering socially feasible spiritual enrichment. To hell with the fools who conscientiously avoid hearing, chanting, and remembering the Lord's Rasa Leela and other Mathurya pastimes with the gopis. They will never attain perfection. If I chance to encounter the likes of such impostor Vaishnavas, I will close my ears to their philosophical absurdities, refuse to see their faces, and scorn the dismal air about their corpse-like material bodies. To hell with fashionably passing off sub-religious quasi-Krishna conscious eclecticism as harmonious devotional practice. To hell with being anyone's giggling guru. To hell with being anyone's giggling disciple. To hell with the deliberate dumbing down of the Krishna consciousness movement. To hell with pandering to the psychophysical indulgences of the movement's lowest common denominator. To hell with the deaf ears of the conceited, self-complacent, ivory-towered religio-administrative elitist. To hell with spineless, self-serving ecclesiastical political correctitude. To hell with our having distributed billions and trillions of transcendental literatures all over the world in scores of languages to give everyone else a chance to become fully Krishna conscious. I say to hell with it all. I'm going to finish now, just now. Much of the afore denounced may be wonderful, meritorious, or pressingly, depressingly important on one level or another. But if in the end, after all is said and done, we ourselves as individuals could not effectively grasp, take to heart, factually realize, and blissfully relish the deepest essential living import of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta, learning to love Brajendanandan Sham by carefully pursuing the bhavas of the exemplary damsels of Braja, what would we have really gained from the whole affair? Truly speaking, what would be the sense or significance of any other allegedly laudable undertaking or feat? Are we merely amassing sukriti or duskriti for another valiant try in some future birth, or what? An inconversant step in hopefully the right direction? Do we really know what we are doing? Do we want Krishna prema or not? Kindly do not hastily suspect these questions to be in any way inconsequential. Okay, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process, as gradual as we make it for ourselves and others. It really doesn't have to be that gradual though. Candidly speaking, charity really begins at home. It's true that the highest realization is to take all risk, to go out of one's way to save the world. That is our mission for sure. Even so, still higher than that, ultimately the very highest realization, the profoundest mission, is to save oneself. First, make yourself spiritually fit. Doctor, heal thyself. First, chant and dance in ecstasy like a madman. Then worry about saving the rest of the world. Higher than becoming guru is to become an accomplished, fully self-realized disciple. And that hardly implies that one should pompously pose as a king with no clothes to passionately impress the little neophytes with how much one might have superficially garnered from the lines of letters on the pages of piles of books. A mesmerizing, ostentatious, cerebral miscellany indeed. Nowhere is it mentioned in any shastra that neophytes and intermediate devotees achieve prema by initiating hundreds and thousands of disciples. It is really best not to accept any disciples at all. Better by far, as a matter of common decency, we humbly endeavor to chant Shuddhanam via the intent prosecution of Yoga Dharma Nam Sankirtan with a view to achieve ultimate Rag Maya perfection at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. Then by his grace, we may hope to become truly empowered, superlatively empowered, instruments in the hands of the predecessor acharyas. May these few sharp but truthful words serve to stimulate in the guileless devotee and increase sincerity of approach to his mission. Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Nam Sankirtan Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot.
Total world victory of Hare Krishna. Okay, full-time commentary. Akinchana Krishna, want to lead us out?
Yeah, you know, it's been 14 years almost. And I think that at the time when this speech was given, a lot of devotees, including a lot of very nice, very sincere senior devotees, people I appreciate very much, people took it in a bad way. But I can understand that, now many years have passed, and the kind of initial shock of of what this was. It's kind of like, I think mostly we've gotten over it. And even, we're honoring Aindra Prabhu at 2 festivals a year, actually. We honor his appearance and disappearance at ISKCON Vrindavan. And even some of the seniors, at one of the last programs, even they were kind of making light of this. Aindra Prabhu, he was speaking with very bombastic words, just like Srila Prabhupada sometimes would speak very strongly and very sharply to kind of wake us up, to get us to focus, to get us to pay attention. So Aindra was doing like that also. And if you look, and he just said it, if you look carefully at what the essential point is, the essential point is a point that all devotees can appreciate. What are we doing in this Krishna conscious society? Ultimately, what we want to do, what we hope to do, is become self-realized. And if we're doing everything else, in the service of the Krishna consciousness movement, but missing that point, then we've really missed it. We've really missed the essence of what's going on over here. The parallel, I think, was made in the biography. If you look in Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, there's the story of Krishna and the wives of the Yajnik Brahmins. We all know the story that the cowherd boys, they went to beg from the Brahmins. The Brahmins are meant to be, the spiritual, religious leaders of society, and they're doing their elaborate yajnas, and the cowherd boys went to beg food from those Brahmins. Those Brahmins didn't agree to give Krishna's, friends anything. But then when they asked those same Brahmins' wives, then the Brahmins understood, who is Krishna? Who is it that we're dealing with? The Brahmins may have had some kind of, whatever external consideration, like we're Brahmins and, why are we going to give to these little Vaishya kids or something like that? But the wives understood what is the reality of Krishna, what is the need for service to Krishna, and so they immediately did that. And at the end of the story, this is in Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, in our Srimad Bhagavatam. The Brahmins speak the same way. I just found it. When the Brahmins came to the understanding that for all of their highly evolved religiosity, they actually missed the whole boat in terms of recognizing Krishna, they spoke exactly like this. They said, "To hell with our being born Brahmanas." Being born a Brahmana, you would think like that's like the most favorable, greatest benediction for spiritual life. They're saying, to hell with that, to hell with our being born as Brahmins, to hell with our learning all the Vedic literature. I mean, what could be more important than learning all the Vedic literature? They're saying, to hell with that.
This is a quote from the Krishna book?
Yeah, I'm reading from Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book. To hell with our performing great sacrifices and observing all the rules and regulations. Isn't, like Aindra kind of, he said in his, to hell with following all the rules and regulations of the Society for Rules and Regulations, something like that, but following the rules and regulations, that's so important. Isn't that so important? I mean, if you're not following the rules and regulations, then, what's going on? They're saying to hell with that. To hell with having followed all the rules and regulations. To hell with our family. To hell with our expert service in performing the rituals exactly according to the descriptions of the scriptures. To hell with it all, for we have not developed transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond the speculation of the mind, body, and senses. So the point is, all of those things, being Brahmins, studying the Vedic literature, expertly performing sacrifices, doing all kinds of, strictly following of rules and regulations, the ultimate point of that is to develop transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the exact point that Aindra has made in this speech. We should be super clear about this. Actually, Aindra didn't say something controversial. He made a very simple, common sense, beautiful powerful, profound Krishna conscious point. He just said it in, I think it's hilarious actually how he spoke. I mean, it makes me miss him so much watching this video, because he's just so exciting to be around. I mean, what an incredible, just like exciting, interesting man with very, very deep mind for Krishna consciousness. I mean, how he must have meditated on this. I think it's something phenomenal. I love him more and more and more watching this. The point is very simple. The point is very clear. The essence of our Krishna conscious society is that ultimately we all have to become Krishna conscious. We all have to develop love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if we've, renounced things and opened temples and opened restaurants and, even protected cows or distributed so many books and dutifully attended so many temple programs and dutifully chanted, so many rounds of like parrot-like japa, or, just to somehow get our rounds done, etc., etc. If we actually miss the boat on developing devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we just kind of got lost in some external trappings of the institution, and the real essence of what we're hoping to do was lost somewhere. Just like for the Brahmins, who were highly evolved in their religiosity, but the essential conclusion of what it's really all about ultimately in spiritual life, they kind of missed it. And so it is possible to do that. I think clearly anyone that has a little experience, you can see that, it is possible to kind of get caught up in an unfocused, version of Krishna consciousness, where you may get caught up in so many different activities or trappings of the institutions or whatever. There's so many kind of things that are on the periphery of Krishna consciousness that you can get caught up in. And still, I'm still in the association devotees and I'm still a devotee. But if you're not really focusing, making advancement towards that ultimate goal, then he's saying to hell with that. You missed the point. I think it's a beautiful point. I think he's made this point throughout his book, probably in 100 different ways, that distributing books is wonderful. The book is called The Heart of Transcendental Book Distribution. The heart of transcendental book distribution is ultimately to yourself become self-realized by studying those books, by getting to the heart of what's in those books, by the message of those books. Just distributing books and getting a great book score and wowing the devotee community with how you're a book distributor and selling so many books so that someone else can become Krishna conscious, you've unfortunately missed something. So anyway, those are a few thoughts. We can discuss more, but man, I miss Aindra. He was the coolest guy, and I feel that so much just watching him. What an incredible, beautiful, deep devotee. I mean, really, just the most extraordinary person I've ever met, actually. Okay, that's all I have to say for now.
Thanks, Prabhu. You want to go next?
You go.
I'll go after Chris. Yeah, you're up, Chris.
Okay. Okay. Just the speaking to make somebody uncomfortable. Well, not to make uncomfortable, but the cause behind that, to bring somebody back to the essence of what Krishna consciousness is, reminded me of something whilst Akinchana Krishna Das was speaking. I'll just show you this book here. This is the older back to Godheads that Srila Prabhupada wrote before coming over. But in the introduction, there's an introduction part by his spiritual. Well, there's an introduction bit. Well, there's part of it. I'm just going to read this out, if I may, because this is very. This ties in. This just duplicates, I think, what's going on. This is it. I have most probably given many people troubles in the mind. Some of them might have thought about me that I am their enemy because I was obliged to speak the plain truth for service and devotion towards the absolute Godhead. I have given them all these troubles only for the reason that they may turn their face towards the personality of Godhead without any desire for gain and with unalloyed devotion. I hope someday or other they may understand me rightly. Now this was spoken by Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami just a few days before he departed, 23rd of December 1936. So just a few days. And the I remember regarding Aindra Prabhu that he said once when he that he had very much a Bhaktisiddhanta way. He used that term of doing things, of expressing works. We're expressing himself under certain circumstances. So to me, that seemed to that's a real tie-in. And the another thing I was trying to find, I couldn't find it immediately. That's why I was out of my seat. There's a book by Tribhuvannath. I try and find out Tribhuvannath Das, who's noted for organizing festivals. I mean, he left his body in 2001, and one of the things he said is that Maya's greatest trick is to make you think that you still have Krishna when she's taken him away from you. So he's something like that. I'd have to try and look at that quote or whatever, but that's just something else that came into my mind. So yes, getting back to the essence, and to get back to the essence, you have to see, hang on, what's taking you away from it, and that's the to hell with speeches and what's happened. So it's it's saying, look, this has happened, this is not good. Well, I mean, you can't put it like that. You have to look at it and see it for what it is. Yeah, that's it. That's all. That's what I can say. Yeah.
Thank you. You nailed it, Akinchana Krishna Prabhu, with the prayers of the Brahmanas. But as I was listening to it again this time, I was like, it has the mood of Yamunacharya's statement. Whenever I think of sex with a woman, I spit at the thought. It's kind of the rasa of disgust. So it has that built into it, which people are reacting to, right? Because not only is it uncomfortable for people to be around that rasa in many instances, but he's applying it to things that they are like, no, we're supposed to say these things are good. And so it's rasa basa in their mind. It creates a rasa basa experience, which his design is to trigger that disgust reflex, and then the dopamine, so the norepinephrine. It's kind of like the statement where you go, look, I don't know if we can work together, but if we can, it'll be magical. It's kind of that. It's a basic kind of principle of like capturing people's attention, is that you shock them and then you make them feel at ease, make them feel discomfort and then comfort at the end of it. And so it has that rasa of Yamunacharya. When I think of sex life with a woman, I spit at the thought, and then it's the structure of it is like the Madhavendra Puri's prayers, which doesn't use the rasa of disgust. He has a different bhav about him, where he says, oh, my prayers 3 times a day, oh, my daily bath, oh, my worship of the the demigods and the ancestors, the forefathers. I offer all respects to you, but I'm just going to have to dip out because I think that it's sufficient for me now that whenever I think of the son of Nanda, that this is enough for me. So I'm bowing out on all the other stuff. And he's kind of constructed in the same way, but it's kind of like all the good things, and then without the, as the Brahmanas here have said, they pull that one back up again. Hare Krishna to Brother Rawadi. He's sending his obeisances in. They say to hell with all these things. They're all condemned because we were inimical to the transcendental personality of Godhead. So the structure of this prayer is Madhavendra Puri's prayer is like, I have attained this, and so therefore I'm leaving these things behind. This one is, they're all condemned because we were inimical. So it's like disgust all the way through, self-disgust, disgust with these things. It's a whole ras, And I think one of the things that people reacted to and continue to react to about it is, if you're like this like bitter, twisted, disaffected devotee, or maybe you're new and you haven't made any advancement, here's a way you can become uber advanced overnight, right? Because you could very easily take what he's saying there as he's like, oh my God, brothers who are out there, you're like taking all these disciples and preaching all that. It's bogus. Only what I'm doing is the real thing. So, now you have like carte blanche to like, quote the Acharya Aindra, you don't have to go to Vrindavan and sit down, 24 hours a day for 24 years or whatever, 40 years and chant Harinam. You can now just go out and like, Aindra Uvacha, to hell with all this. This is bogus. Unless you're doing Harinam Sankirtan, you're nothing, And so it's that. And you pointed to it as the, to hell with following all the rules and regulations of the International Society for Rules and Regulations, right? And Utsahan Nischayat Daryat Tat Tat Karma Pravartana. No, it's the other one. Niyamagra. Prayasyas Cha. Yeah. Pratyahara Prayasyas Cha. Prajalpa Niyamagraha.
Yeah, Prajalpo Niyamagraha.
Yeah, so the Niyamagraha, you have to follow the rules and regulations. You can't not follow them, but then once you're following them, you can't like become attached to following them. So again, it's kind of like this is not for the neophyte. This is to break up the attachment. If you haven't become attached to the form, to hell with attending the Mongolati and doing the kirtans. Yeah, but this is for people who have done that, for people who are listening that are like, oh, now I got to give up my attachment to that. To continue to seek the essential thing that brought me to Krishna consciousness in the first place. So that's what I wanted to just throw in there as like kind of like an objection to it, a misuse, a misunderstanding of it. Yeah. And then also an appreciation for the structure again of what he's created there. And it has its its roots in the tradition, in the prayers of the Brahmanas, Madhavendra Puri's prayer, Yamunacharya's statement, and as Chris Prabhu was pointing out, the mood and modus operandi of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, the lion Shringa Guru with his cutting kind of words, smashing, what do they call it? Aggressive grace. That's it for me. Dana Devi. Full-time commentary on.
One thing that came into my mind was when we were reading the book, and he was very very uncomfortable and against it when the new wave of young devotees coming and mixing with the ladies, and ladies just like, I want to be here, and just mixing up with the males and creating a lot of disturbance there. They were kind of like, how I pick up that is, they were oblivious to how that makes it feel to other people, especially, in India, they have some sort of principles they follow, and the new generation of ladies and guys come in and just, super cool. We're going to be doing this and doing that, and as I please, and they wear whatever I want. And he was seeing all of this. He was like, no, this is not something we should be doing, because it's creating a lot of disturbance. And he was seeing with the eyes of being far-sighted person. I can see him, he's a far-sighted person. And the consequences of it. and how the contamination of Maya was just coming in full force. And he could see that, but people were just like, nah. And that's something that just came to my head when I was reading the book. And also his attention, his devotion to his deities. There was nothing else for him more important but his deities and singing for the deities. And so loyal and faithful to them. And he didn't want to do anything else except for to serve them and to sing. And anything outside that, it was just like a complete, walking in a very contaminated place that affected the mind and the spiritual being of living entities. And I don't know, I guess his commentary and how he was saying all of this is just like, this gentleman, he sees things as they are, and his pure heart, and his determination to just, I don't want to deal with Maya, and I just want to do service to Krishna. I just want to love Krishna, and anything that I do for him, I just want to do it in such a way that is fine, it's melodious, it's enchanting, not for me, but for Krishna. And that is the power of Aindra when I read his books and when I hear his singing. Very powerful. That's me.
Yeah, Akinchana.
Yeah, I think 2 points you just made. Dana, pronouncing it Dana, is that correct? One thing is Aindra did have an incredible vision for kind of seeing who's who and seeing what's what. Someone that I'm friendly with who's good at astrology told me that something in Aindra's chart showed that he had the kind of planetary combination of like, a large manager that can just kind of see everything, what's going on, what activities are being done by who, how to kind of deal with people. He did have a very profound vision for things. So I just wanted to echo that. That's true. And I think it's great picking up on that. The other thing, what you said, what was really important to him was serving his deities, chanting and singing for his deities. That's right. There's another point or another section of the book that I thought we could just read a few lines, because he's going to say the same thing that he said in the To Hell With speech, but kind of from an other angle, and he's going to apply it to himself. And this time it's going to come across quite a bit softer in many ways, but it's going to illuminate kind of the spirit in which I think he's clearly speaking. First, he's talking, he's speaking a lot in his book in prayer. So he starts this prayer, my dear, unlimitedly gorgeous Sachi Sutta Sundara. If you know Aindra's deities, his main large Gornitai deities are named Sachi Sutta. So he's praying to his deities, and what he's going to describe are his aspirations, his longings for eternal service to those deities. So he says, when will your magnificent Goswamis of Vrindavan, headed by Sri Rupa, leniently bestow upon this fallen derelict the priceless treasure of loving service to your Prem Nam Sankirtan Leelas in the Nitya Navadweep sector of Golokadam? I will happily serve in any small way to help augment your blissful relishment of the moods of Braja throughout the day and night. I yearn to not only see, but to also get, by your supremely merciful divine dispensation, the chance to actually participate in your blissful nocturnal kirtans at Srivas Angam in the company of your eternal associates. I will ever immerse my ever youthful anti-material body, mind, voice, and heart in the ever-expanding ocean of your Prem Nam Sankirtan pastimes. You see, so he's praying to Nitai Sachi Sutta. He wants to be in Kirtan with them. You know, by the mercy of the Goswamis of Vrindavan, he wants to have an eternal, youthful, you know, Brahmin form that can serve the pastimes at Srivas Sangam with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he goes on. Dancing ecstatically while wearing blissfully chiming ankle bells about my feet, I will at different times play various kinds of kartals, wampers, and gongs to help exhilarate your heights of Premananda. Sometimes I will play on the snake-like Nasringa horn or conch shell. Other times I will play happily upon the Vamsi flute, joyfully generating a festive mood to encourage your rapturous dance. So already, you know, Aindra in his form, you know, that we knew as Aindra, he would sometimes wear ankle bells on his feet. He would sometimes play the flute. He was a very good flute player. So in his eternal aspirations, he also wants to play those instruments in the Sankirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to exhilarate his heights of Premananda. That's a beautiful sentiment. At times, I will play on stringed instruments. Aindra could also play on stringed instruments. And occasionally, I myself, exhilarated with divine exuberance, will blissfully dance, raising my trembling arms in transcendental delight. At other times, I will again and again roll in the dust of the feet of all the Vaishnavas, profusely crying streams of tears in unbounded happiness. I hope and pray that someday I, at the behest of your eternal associates, may sweetly sing the holy names of Krishna for you in a voice overflowing with intoxicating Madhurya Ras. Actually, what he's speaking here is so deep and so profound, you could meditate on this for the rest of your life. At that time, you will recognize me as your long-lost eternal servitor. I'm just going to read a few more sentences of this because it's very beautiful. Dear honey-faced dancing Lord of my life, when will that blessed moment arise when, drenching my entire body with torrents of tears, gushing from your incomparably love-laden lotus eyes, you will mercifully enfold my insignificant yet fully love-saturated person into your most magnanimous bosom. In other words, he's expressing his aspiration that one day Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being pleased with him, will embrace him, and the tears of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will come on to his body. So these are his eternal aspirations, and he goes on. I don't want to, just read and read and read, but I just wanted to establish that this is the culture of Krishna consciousness that is in Aindra Prabhu's mind. This is the meditation. This is the cultivation of pure devotional aspirations that he is cultivating in his practice of Krishna consciousness. These are like his hopes and dreams. In material consciousness, we have so many kinds of mundane hopes and dreams and desires. And the pure devotees have purified their tendency for hoping and dreaming and desiring to purely Krishna conscious hopes and dreams. So Aindra is expressing his culture of pure Krishna conscious desire. So he goes on for some time, and he ends this section. Listen to how he ends it. I think this is really helpful and really illuminates the spirit of what we heard in the To Hell With speech. He says, if I could not somehow or other ultimately achieve the fulfillment of all these hopes for divine service, then what would be the meaning of my having joined the Hare Krishna movement? What would be the value of my having unassumingly sacrificed by altruistically distributing thousands and thousands of transcendental literatures in the earlier years of my devotional career? what would be the purpose of my having, in my own shameless way, embraced the severe austerities of the renounced order of life? What would be the sense of my ongoing struggle to loudly sing the holy name? In other words, if I'm not going to get the goal of Krishna consciousness, then there's no meaning to these other, to having distributed books, to having, painstakingly done so many austerities, lived like a Goswami in Vrindavan for so many years. It's practically like, the amount of penance and austerity Aindra did was just like so beyond, what most people could even think about. He's saying, what's the point of that? What's the point of that if I don't come to the end of going back to Godhead, of developing pure devotional service? He says, what would be the point of my living and dying in the holy land of Braj? Even living and dying in the holy land of Braj, it's not an end in itself. It's the reason I'm doing that is to become a pure devotee. What would be the significance of all these toilsome, long-winded sentences? In other words, to hell with this book, even if we're not coming to the point of pure devotional service, if we're not becoming Krishna conscious, what would be the sanity of my maintaining all these lofty aspirations? What would be the proof that the Supreme Lord is most merciful to the fallen? Anyway, I hope the point was clear. What do you think?
Absolutely. And one point he's saying, all of this are nuisances. And in this point, it's like, what is the point of my even for, taking that breathing if I'm not thinking about Krishna and serving Krishna? What is the point?
It's Kabe Habe Bolo Sedi and Amar at the beginning. And also the Shikshastakam. When will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? And then it's the Bhagavatam verse that says, can't remember it exactly, but endeavors are so much useless endeavor if they do not provoke loving service. Do you remember that verse?
Mm-mm.
No?
Yeah, it's like if we think deeply about it, it's like, what is the point to even have like a handsome looking guy? It's not gonna give me liberation. What is the point I'm going to have like a huge amount of money? It's not gonna give me liberation. It's not gonna give me happiness. Everybody knows about it. What is the point? What is the point just to be going to the temple and just like, dressed up nicely, a pretty face and whatever? If we are not sincere there, we're not actually trying to love Krishna. What is the point if we every day we're not trying to be pure-hearted?
I have it. It's 128. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead.
Beautiful, beautiful. Very good.
Mm.
Very good. Very good. There's a bhajan on my mind that I just tried to search for it for a minute. It's not coming right now. But Narottam Das Thakur also, he says, what is the use of my like celibacy and my austerity and my anyway, I forgot exactly. He's saying, farewell to my to different kind of religious rituals and so on. Again, the essence is developing spontaneous love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah, it's on the other side, because it's one thing if you've never done anything like that to say, to hell with austerity and celibacy and religious principles and following rules and regulations. And internally you're like, oh, this is awesome. Do you mean I get to jump straight to the end without having to actually go through that? But this is not a person like that saying that. This is a person who's practicing that, deeply demonstrating that. And then, so this is very advanced. This is like, Akinchana Das Babaji. What was his name? I think his name was Akinchana Krishna Das Babaji.
That's right.
A disciple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, It's like he's a Babaji, that guy. He's like a Babaji.
There is scope in Krishna consciousness for neglecting rules and regulations if it is for the service and for the pleasure of Krishna. If one neglects rules and regulations whimsically for one's sense gratification, that's called, sahajiaism. That's called, bogus. That's absolutely unfavorable, undesirable, and everything we're against ultimately. But neglecting rules and regulations, as shown throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita in so many examples, neglecting a rule for the higher principle of serving the Lord is absolutely acceptable and desirable.
I can't walk past it. So, like, for example, breaking the regular principle of no meat eating, for example, to like inject yourself with something containing fetal bovine serum in order to continue with your service to the Lord would be an example of that, right?
Good example.
For some people, yeah. Could be, arguably.
Conversely, wasn't, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, they were saying, to preach in like, an extremely difficult new field, even eat meat if you have to, isn't it?
That's a pastime with Harikesh Swami, who was complaining about the inability to get vegetables in Russia. Oh, we have to queue for so long, and he complained about it a number of times until Srila Prabhupada said to him, well, eat meat then.
Right.
And
so
then
to help
Harikesh Swami,
ultimately.
well, Harikesh Swami said, but Prabhupada, what about my consciousness? And Srila Prabhupada literally said to him, to hell with your consciousness.
Wow. I mean,
preaching must go on.
Yeah, what a profound, what a profound story that I think, again, highlights the same thing. If being a vegetarian is not ultimately the highest principle, it's so important. No one should be whimsical about that. It doesn't mean, okay, that's cool. Now I can, eat whatever I want, even if it's non-veg. He wasn't encouraging anybody to do that whimsically, but for the service of the Sankirtan movement, for the highest principle of service, then even we can neglect vegetarianism. I mean, that's a far out story, actually.
I got something to write us out with, but before we head to that, for reflections from you, Chris?
Yeah. Well, just one thing. Just wanted to ask. There was part of a chapter in the Aindra Kirtan Revolution book where there's this lady who comes to Vrindavan. She's going to die there, and Aindra says that, if you leave your body, I think in Vrindavan, then I think you're going back to Godhead, or something like that. He was quite strong in that, and that's one of the reasons he took this vow never to leave Vrindavan, and so sort of squaring that with this sort of what you were saying, sort of almost like to hell with that even. Can you explain that to me? Because things, at the end of the day, things have value, and it's about weighting them. So this is when you're talking about really advanced concepts. It's about weighting that with the other things. So this is a good just this is something I think where should be known more. But just about this living and dying in Vrindavan. I mean, this lady died in Vrindavan. Aindra led a kirtan, and he wanted to be sure that when he did that, it was about for her going back to Godhead rather than it's for her to get better. So he even asked that. But how do you square that, what he was doing there, with that that sort of statement you're reading before about living and dying in Vrindavan? So not so important. Maybe I didn't understand what you were saying, Akinchana.
Well, Srila Prabhupada also made comments to that effect. I don't have any on hand right now, but he also made comments to the effect that anyone who dies in Vrindavan will go back to Godhead. Certainly, it's very auspicious. Once there's just like there's 10 offenses to the holy name. There's also a list of 10 offenses to the holy Dham. And, it includes like being violent to the residents of the Dham and, profiting, making money off the Dham. There's a list of offenses. And so at one point, someone was discussing that. And at the end of that discussion, Aindra kind of came in with his conclusion. And he said, actually, the greatest offense to Vrindavan is to leave Vrindavan after having obtained residence in Vrindavan. He said the only way it may not be considered as an offense is if, like Srila Prabhupada, one leaves Vrindavan for the purpose of spreading the glories of Vrindavan. So if one will leave Vrindavan for one's sense gratification, for like a more, comfortable situation or better facility or something, then that will be a great offense to Vrindavan. But if one will leave Vrindavan like what Srila Prabhupada did, to be a missionary of the message of Vrindavan, then it won't be considered as an offense. So being in Vrindavan, living in Vrindavan is a very, very powerful, it's one of the 5 most potent angas of bhakti, actually, along with chanting and hearing Bhagavatam, serving Vaishnavas, worshiping the deity. And so, those angas of bhakti are our life in Krishna consciousness. Those are the activities that are there to propel us forward. And so taking shelter of Vrindavan is certainly of, great importance, paramount importance in Krishna consciousness. But it may be that, if for service, if there's some service to be done, leaving Vrindavan, especially for us, serving the Sankirtan mission, spreading the Sankirtan movement, then it may even be desirable to leave Vrindavan. And I think, Prabhupada could have criticized, devotees that, maybe just find their comfortable bhajan in Vrindavan without really serving the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Was that an answer to your question? Did that make it more clear?
I think it was actually. The distinction that I was trying to do is basically on the platform service to Lord, service. That's pretty much what it comes down to, essentially.
I mean, in the passage that I just read, he does say, what would be the meaning of my living and dying in Vrindavan if I don't attain the ultimate fulfillment of all my hopes for eternal service? So, just living in Vrindavan, without attaining that goal, then he's saying, even that, he would be dissatisfied.
Yeah, the hopes of devotional service. And with Aindra, I was looking at going over this whole, in the middle of the book, this whole thing about he ended up getting, he was very much anxious, really really intensely anxious to know what his eternal service was, and so he was having dreams, and eventually, and he took the what's called the Python vow. In other words, he didn't eat unless anybody asked and anybody offered him. And if, of course, people wouldn't pick up on that because he's offering food to the deities, and they're thinking, oh, he's going to take some, but he was not. He wasn't going to tell anyone he was taking the vows. So they almost killed him. But a few months afterwards, then he was getting not just immediately after, just a few months afterwards, he was getting dreams and was Srila Prabhupada, and so that happened. So yeah, it's a whole thing about the service of service of the Lord is the essence factor. Yeah.
We're coming up to the top of the second hour here. There's like an unlimited ocean of nectar that we could churn here, but I'd like to write us out with another Aindra speech. And we have a question from the audience that I think this will speak to. Stoka Krishna Prabhu says, did Aindra Prabhu say much about what we are supposed to do instead of all those things he said should go to hell. So I'd like to write us out with this with this speech. It's 3 minutes and 50 seconds long, and then we'll take some concluding remarks and then stick a pin in this particular episode, and we may have to come back to continue to churn this ocean even more. Let's check this one out for today.
Please remember, and I beseech you again and again, please remember, worldwide ISKCON grassroots Nam Sankirtan Revolution. Revolution means revolution. It means we have to shed pounds and gallons of blood to get the job done. We have to turn this movement inside out, upside down, whatever we have to do, but we have to put Nam Sankirtan back into its rightful place of dignity in the forefront of our movement. It's absolutely essential for the proper growth of our movement. Those who've understood this are awake to the need of the hour, and those who have not understood it are still sleeping. It's time to wake up and understand what is the responsibility of every man, woman, and child in this movement. To take seriously that Dharma which Lord Chaitanya himself inaugurated for the deliverance of all the fallen conditioned souls. For the rest of this Kali Yuga, there's another 427,000 years left to Kali Yuga. The Yuga Dharma doesn't change. The next Yuga is Satya Yuga. And for them, contemplative, peaceful meditation is where it's at. But in Kali Yuga, you got to get fired up. Every one of you, fired up, chanting, dancing from the heart, like you really mean it, like you really want Lord Chaitanya's mercy, so that you can even think, you can even hope to go back home, back to Godhead in this one lifetime. It's not a joke, it's the real thing. So stand up and do what's right. Do the real thing. Perform Nam Sankirtan daily, every day, for as many hours as possible. And you'll get there. I guarantee it. Not that I guarantee it. Lord Chaitanya has guaranteed it. The soul has to go back home, back to Godhead. And the way that's going to happen is if the soul agrees to engage all of his psychophysical energies and his whole heart in the performance of Sneha Samyukta Harinam Sankirtan. Sneha means with affection. Samyukta means complete engagement. Full on. Fired up. And back home, back to Godhead in this one lifetime. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. Kalona Stephen, 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 Piranmitra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay, let's take final concluding remarks for this episode. Maybe let's go from here and then to Chris and then end with Akinchana Krishna, Prabhu. Devi?
What really makes me sad is the disappearance of many pure-hearted souls. Because of them, they purify the environment or the wherever they are, and helps people that genuinely wants to progress in their spiritual life to go faster because of their purity. But these days it's kind of like a battle to even keep oneself away from Maya, and seeing a spiritual person out there right now, like Aindra Prabhu, it's really hard to get in there. So yeah, I feel really sad to not see someone like a pure hearted and say, this is the one, and I'm going to follow it, and I'm going to do, because the purity and the force is right there and it's contagious. It's, although he departed this world, his life, his devotion to Krishna is so empowering, and how, like he's saying, fire up. It's so empowering what he says and what he did in his life. Yeah. Okay, that's me.
Thank you. He reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die, for thou art living and sound, and while living, live to spread the holy name around. So all those kirtans are there, and that kirtan continues. It's like a expanding sound wave over the planet, even today, and this will go on for generations. Now the kirtan that he started, we were sitting there in that 24-hour kirtan. It was in the middle of the night in Canberra. We got the news, and then we just kept chanting. All the devotees there, we were all connected by that. We got we had a photo of Aindra printed, put in a frame. We carried that with us for the rest of the tour around the country, the 24-hour kirtans that we did. Put his photo there. He's immortal. Lives on in the sound vibration, and what a powerful sound vibration it is. Chris, your concluding remarks.
One of the secrets to devotional service, it seems Aindra was saying to all of us, was simply honest endeavor, and that's pretty much it. And it's like, but you can get hit by things institutionally, and devotees came to him. There was this one thing that struck me in the book on page 316, 317, some questions, like one person said that he was confused about Vaishnava aparad. A lot of people get scared about that. Oh, can I offend these people? And one needs a balanced outlook. One shouldn't go too far one way, shouldn't go too far the other way. And the only person who can properly distinguish it is a very, very advanced soul like Aindra. And so this guy called Yadavendra was saying that there seems to be a fine line between stating facts and insulting someone. Can you explain the difference? I mean, one has to function knowing this. If one doesn't, anyway. So he says basically nothing wrong with calling a spade, but this is interesting. Becomes aparad or offense if you exaggerate the facts. And I remember when I was a kid, growing up, children's books, there's one author called Roald Dahl, and if you've ever read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Giant Peach, or that sort of thing, one of the ways he did things to get a story, he exaggerated facts about people. So there's some old ugly old lady. There's this really good artist who drew in his books, Quentin Blake, and he would do caricatures of that, and so you enhance that. But when you but so yeah, one can see it more easily. So anyway, Aindra says, if you exaggerate the facts of sort of something's wrong, you exaggerate it, then of course, yeah, then that is an apparat. That is offense, making mountain a molehill. But when doing this, when actually calling spade a spade, there should be some purpose, utility behind it, to stating an unpleasant fact. So we've just been talking about this to hell with speech. There's a purpose, utility behind that, and we went into that in a wee bit of depth. So yes. So this devotee then comes back and says, well, wouldn't it be safe if we didn't see the bad in the Vaishnava and only saw the good? I mean, and Aindra himself has said, always see the good in a bad situation. But this guy was basically saying, well, I don't want to touch seeing bad in somebody. It's little bit dangerous. Let's not. But Aindra says, no, that's wrong. We have to see and learn from both the good and the bad. But when you see the bad, you should see the good in it. So it's like if there's some sort of, we see in ISKCON on, so, you get arguments and things, but if you see always concentrate on the good in something, then you enhance that. Then the people who are maybe doing the bad may be more inclined to engage more. So yeah, I think there are benefits to things. So yeah, but in summary of what I wanted to say, just honest endeavor, just honesty was a big thing. I think that comes through this. I mean, he was honestly on the level he wants, and on the level he was at. He wasn't bluffing or anything. And I suppose one thing I wanted to ask Akinchana, because you went into Aindra's room a lot, and so many people have been saying, yes, this is like the spiritual world, the atmosphere. I mean, to explain something about that, some sort of hint about that. I mean, because he had all those salagram sealers and everything, those stories behind that. It's incredible. Well, I haven't got the words to explain it, but yes, honest endeavor honesty at a very, very high level, no bluff. So yeah, that's what I get.
Thank you, Chris. Akinchana Krishna, Prabhu, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, first we'll start with Aindra's room being like the spiritual world. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imagine going to the Bhajan Kutir of, any of the great acharyas. Like there's Srila Prabhupada's rooms in Radha Damodar, or there's like Rupa Goswami's Bhajan Kutir. In Puri every year we go to Haridas Thakur, like the Bhajan, the Siddha tree where he's doing his japa. There may be so many examples. If you go to the place of worship of a great personality, definitely it will be surcharged with spiritual energy, unlike what you will encounter in any kind of mundane sphere. And so, yeah, I mean, Aindra had, a very incredible electric personality. And his room was definitely the spiritual world. I mean, he was just absolutely absorbed in his deity worship, in his chanting. If you'll read his book, you kind of get a serious glimpse into the things that are on his mind, that are on his consciousness, and it's absolutely extraordinary. You played that clip about the Kirtan Revolution, and so I thought to try to say a few things about that. Aindra Prabhu joined the Krishna consciousness movement, I think 71, 72, and he joined in DC. He was from Arlington, Virginia, and so he joined in the kind of capital city. And I was just listening, he was saying, with his temple of about 19 devotees, they were going out on 14 hours of Harinam Sankirtan a day. And it was a time in ISKCON before there was a lot of books to distribute. So their program was just chanting Hare Krishna. And at one point, Srila Prabhupada wrote to their temple president, encouraging them. At one point, we found that letter. But essentially, as Aindra says it, Srila Prabhupada basically said, I'm so pleased to hear about your 14-hour Sankirtan days. That was like a great impetus, a great inspiration for Aindra Prabhu. Also, we know the story. At one point, Aindra Prabhu was leading Kirtan as he was walking with Srila Prabhupada on like the temple property. And Aindra said, he was leading, he was like kind of playing his mridanga in a simple way as far as he knew best at the time. And he was singing with his full heart. And he said that Srila Prabhupada turned to him and said the one word that he had said to him in his whole kind of manifest presence. Srila Prabhupada turned to Aindra and said, Jai. And so Aindra said, how did I get that Jai out of Srila Prabhupada? It was by chanting Hare Krishna. It was about doing Nam Sankirtan. So he said, so that's kind of been, a great inspiration for me ever since. Aindra talks about, ISKCON went through different periods where, maybe book distribution became very prominent, and then it kind of evolved into just collecting money became very important, kind of collecting money maybe by any means necessary. And Aindra became discouraged by that. And I think especially around the early 80s, he felt a strong determination, like the way he preaches that Harinam Sankirtan should be put back into the forefront of the Hare Krishna movement. And so he made that incredible temple truck in those years. And there was one story that I heard that I always thought was very beautiful. Aindra expressed a certain frustration that the devotees weren't more inspired or inclined to join him in going out and doing Harinam Sankirtan in the public. And one of his godbrothers, who's like a leading devotee, said to him, Aindra, instead of complaining that people aren't going out and doing Sankirtan with you, why don't you do your Sankirtan in such an attractive way that others will feel inspired to do it with you? And so I heard that Aindra took that as, I think Krishna has spoken through this godbrother. And I think that kind of sums up the essence of what he was all about. He did his Sankirtan in such an attractive way that so many people around the world became inspired to join him or to kind of join his spirit of Sankirtan. And in terms of, the Heart of Transcendental book distribution discusses kind of like the dynamic of external preaching and internal devotional development. And I kind of think it's important maybe to underscore this just as a final point. I hope I'm not going on too long, but there's just one thing I thought to read from his book and then maybe make a little discussion about. Because on the one hand, Aindra is emphasizing, the cultivation of pure devotional hopes and longings as kind of being at the core of what our Krishna consciousness movement is about. At the same time, he's promoting Sankirtan. You should chant Hare Krishna, sing Hare Krishna, so that others can hear. And so, what's the relationship between those two? Sometimes we have this question. In my spiritual life, I've definitely had this question, and I just like to read something where Aindra answers it in a very beautiful way. He says, "Some fools foolishly philosophize that performance of the Yuga Dharma has very little, if anything, to do with the internal culture of Raganuga Bhajan. They hastily relegate Nam Sankirtan to the realm of externals, Sankirtan being, of course, the business of the masses and mere ordinary Bahiranga Bhaktas, external devotees. Their tendency to do like this, however, simply demonstrates their utter incompetence to reasonably grasp the inner significance of the eternally comprehensive, broad spectrum Sankirtan principle that undoubtedly fosters both external and internal devotional evolvement. They really ought to be embarrassed and ashamed of themselves, meaning those who criticize Harinam Sankirtan as merely an external activity. He's going to explain how it's both serves the external purpose of the preaching mission and the internal purpose of cultivating pure devotional service. Harinam Sankirtan, as well as its extension in the form of transcendental book distribution, Brihat Bhagavat Kirtan, when sincerely and purely done for the Lord's exclusive pleasure, in fact, naturally and very easily elicits within the heart of a deeply introspective devotee a profound, indelible impression of the soul's latent, constitutional Sri disposition. One thereby becomes gradually awakened to the pure cognition of the soul's ultimate source and ontological position as a constituent of Sri Radhika, Krishna's compassion personified, as part of the cooperative aspect of Srimati Radharani's complete whole loving game plan. Sri, the feminine influence, refers to the principle of expansion. When the Sri principle is pervertedly reflected in the illusory material dimension, where both so-called males and so-called females are deranged, misled, and corrupted by a false male egoism, Purusha Abhiman, aberrant to the original constitutional temper of the soul, it manifests as the expansion of a Mayic man's, quote-unquote, loathsome, all-entangling empire of mundane, egocentric, quote-unquote, enjoyments. In other words, in the material world, the feminine principle is there to like expand the material like enjoyments, illusions, entrapments of the man. You know, what is like the, you know, for a man, what is this really the meaning of sense gratification if there's no woman around? It's the woman that's going to kind of expand the whole sphere of material enjoyment. Therefore, you know, if you're a single dude, you can just kind of rough it on somebody's couch or something. But as soon as you got a wife, then you know you need the apartment and the car and the house and the, you know, the colored TV and everything like that. So that's kind of, so he's saying that's the Sri principle in the material sphere. But now he's going to explain what it means in the spiritual world. The pure spiritual aspect of this Sri principle, however, exists diversely in all pure constitutional rasas, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, proportionate to the degree to which masculine consciousness is discarded in deference to the intensified, unalloyed, selfless service temperament that extends to the standard of Parakya Bhava, where the Sri dynamic expresses its maximum deliciousness. This is kind of dense language, but I'll try to explain something of what I understand of what he's saying. Serving to blissfully expand the empire of the Lord's satisfaction, Krishna's transcendental Sri enjoyables purposefully entangle him in the loving network of amorous interpersonal reciprocity on the spiritual platform. Radha, Lord Krishna's Adya Shakti, is known as Mula Prakriti, the original root of all expanded varieties of Prakriti, which is intrinsically female or ontologically the enjoyed aspect of the absolute. In other words, when you see Krishna with Radharani and his gopis, their entire consciousness, you know, as like the pure version, like we talked about what the perverted version is in the material world, the pure version is that Radharani and the gopis, they're always working to serve, to expand Krishna's kind of empire of enjoyment. You know, how can we be beautiful for Krishna? How can we cook for Krishna? How can we, you know, dance with Krishna and entertain with Krishna and enjoy with Krishna? And their whole their whole mood, their whole consciousness is expanding Krishna's kind of realm of enjoyment. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, they're the supreme enjoyables, and they always want to offer more and more for Krishna's enjoyment. That's how the Sri principle is working in the spiritual world in relationship with Krishna. So Aindra goes on. The infinitesimal jiva, para prakriti, characteristically possessed of the spiritual Sri quality, expanded to a minute degree, is designed to in some small way facilitate or help to expand the happiness of the supreme enjoyer, Sri Krishna. So that's ultimately our intrinsic identity and purpose also, is to expand Krishna's enjoyment. This supramundane Sri function of the pure soul is most thoroughly fulfilled when the subordinate she cooperates to fulfill the purpose of the Sri Empress, Sri Radha, by directly or indirectly serving to transcendentally increase the Lord's variety of enjoyables. I hope that's clear. So, expanding, I'm almost done. I feel I'm sorry for going over too much, but the inherent nature of the soul is to expand Krishna's enjoyment. And that will come, that will be manifest kind of most purely, most gloriously, most powerfully when the soul is cooperating with Radharani, who is, the supreme of Krishna's devotees. To when the soul is cooperating with Radharani, she's expanding, making all the arrangements to increase Krishna's enjoyment. So now he says, purely conducted Sankirtan of Radha Krishna's all-attractive names, forms, qualities, and pastimes facilely enables the practicing devotee to tangibly experience what it is to function in that way. Because through its performance, the devotee, aside from personally pleasing the Lord, naturally serves to expand Krishna's pleasure empire by inducing a myriad of souls to come forward to serve him for his satisfaction. So the idea is that Sankirtan is we're practicing, engaging in that Sri principle of expanding Krishna's enjoyment. Radharani, like it says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, if you remember, Radharani is always looking, for new girlfriends for Krishna. And if Krishna is interested to enjoy with a particular girl, and that girl is reluctant, Radharani will personally go and serve her and humbly beg her to engage in Krishna's service. So that's the spiritual Sri principle. And by doing Sankirtan, where we're trying to invite more and more additional souls to come into the service of Krishna, that what Aindra is saying is, by doing Sankirtan, we're practicing acting in that spirit, trying to bring more and more souls for the pleasure of Krishna to expand his empire of enjoyment. Thus, by performing Sankirtan Yagya, one becomes scientifically acquainted with the true essence of one's intrinsic Sri nature, which undoubtedly finds its peak expression in all perfection as a follower of the transcendentally flirtatious damsels of Braja. Herein lies the sum and substance of the science of self-realization. As such, it should be clearly affirmed that Shuddhanam Sankirtan and the perfection of Krishna consciousness, augmenting Braja Prema Bhakti Ras, go together very well. So I hope the idea is somewhat clear. This is how Aindra is harmonizing the need for the external distribution of Krishna consciousness to try to induce more people to come to the service of Krishna. How he's harmonizing that with our internal development by bringing more souls, especially by Harinam Sankirtan, and by extension by transcendental book distribution. We're kind of bringing more souls. We're trying to induce them to serve Krishna, to expand his pleasure. And so, I just wanted to go over that point because it's something I've been meditating on recently, and something I think is very profound, one of the very profound messages of Aindra's book. And just because you brought up video where Aindra is preaching so strong on this principle of Nam Sankirtan, I wanted to harmonize that with the previous point that was made by Aindra in the To Hell With speech, where he's basically saying, if we're not culturing the devotional sentiments and the devotional moods of the Brajbasis, the eternal Brajbasis, then to hell with the rest of the Krishna consciousness movement. So the Sankirtan principle, doing Harinam Sankirtan, is like the pinnacle, the service that kind of brings these 2 points together. We want to do more and more Harinam Sankirtan. At the same time, we want to be culturing the mood of the Brajbasis. Doing Sankirtan is a very profound way of practicing and culturing that. I hope that was kind of clear. I'm kind of shooting from the hip, but
That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Akinchana Krishna Prabhu, Chris Prabhu, for coming on, glorifying Aindra. Thanks to the viewers. If you've made it all the way through here, if you paid attention, you now know who killed Aindra. Stick around, guys. We're going to, we'll come back in a second and roll the credits.
Take 4. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,